I'm Adam Niffen.
And I'm Jeremy Cocaine.
This is Smith Welding Restoration. Nothing to add to that?
Well, it's, you know, that's where we work. That's what we do. We make things pretty.
Alright folks, gosh, we've got a plethora, a ton of really good how-to videos out there. We got a lot of really good, this is what I've done videos out there, and we do both, okay? You know, you caught up with us, you know, here Smith Welding Restoration. And we've done both. The grandiose, this is the work I do. We've done some videos of this is the type of work that's done out there. Be wary. This car lot crap that we've done. So we got all these videos out there. We got all these videos, guys, showing off the toolboxes. I've done a couple of those. But what I see lacking out there right now is alright, so you want to do this. You want to do this at home. You want to do this in your garage. You want to be a hobbyist and build your muscle car, build your hot rod, build go-karts. Who gives a shit? Build stuff that goes vroom and rolls down the road at increasingly dangerous speeds. Alright, so I want to do a series of videos on that. Alright, so this is segment number 1 of this series of videos. What I want to get into is I'm going to sit right here in my little wicker chair in front of my toolbox chatting with y'all. What you've got to do is ponder this space. What space have I got available? Is it mixed space where I'm parking cars in here at night and I play on the weekends? Is this dedicated space? Your space is going to make a big difference there. I know there's a series of books out there. I actually bought it because I was curious what was in it. I'm always curious how people set their shit up to run. And I'm always looking for that. I don't have that out there, so I'm doing one myself. What I think works most efficiently for me. And as a hobbyist, what you would want to look toward. There's a book out there, basically, how to set up your own little hobby space. At some point in this sequence of videos, I'll dig it out. I'll give you the title. It's pretty intuitive, pretty informative. Alright, so what are you going to do in your space? That's the first one. You know, a lot of guys will do oil changes, brakes, shit like that. Routine maintenance. You're doing routine maintenance, you probably got ramps or jack stands, you got a jack, you got basic tools. Maybe even a workbench and things like that. Basic tools. You can go up to Sears and pick up a big 200 and some piece kit. That's enough. That's enough to get the ball rolling. You'll get specialty tools as you go. Harbor Freight, same thing. You know, this is setting up a hobby space on a budget. How's that? That's our video sequence now, is setting up a hobby space on a budget. This is what I do for a living, for what that's worth. I don't think it's worth shit right now, but it's a slow season, so it's easy to be down, right? Now, what we're going to be looking at is, what are you doing in your space? Most guys out there, they're watching these videos, you set up with basic tools. You know, you're going to do some welding and fabricating. You're going to do some painting. You may get yourself a little sandblast cabinet or a pot blaster and clean parts up. Let's look at various tasks. Cleaning up parts and chassis and frames and stuff, you can do that with wire wheels and basic tools, grinders, wire wheels, and shit like that. I'd suggest strongly for hobbyists, stick in that realm. Stick in that realm. Don't get into sandblasters and shit like that. They're messy. Your wife, you'll sleep in your garage at that point. In every town around the world, you got a guy that's stripping parts, okay? Just take it to the dude. Get it over with. The volume of air you need to properly run a sandblaster is ridiculous. So just scratch that off your list of shit I might want to look at. Handy tools, you know, you've always got your grinders, some way to cut steel, chop saw, small horizontal band saw, some way to cut steel. You want that handy. Not necessary, but it's useful. A 4.5 inch angle grinder will do all that in a pinch. So yeah, let's look at fabricating needs. What you have to do to fabricate parts, put panels on, fix your stuff. All right, cool. So you got welders out there. If you can spring for a big 220 welder, good for you. Do it. You can weld up to 1/4 inch plate, which gets you in the realm. You know, your frames are generally 10 gauge, 3/16, 1/8 inch. But you don't want to weld that with a little 110 welder. Frame work, you need something with a little more gusto, something with a little more guts. Otherwise, you run the tragic risk of having something break that's important. Suspension, frame, chassis. You don't want that to go bad. We have 3 methods of welding in our shop. We got old gas, oxygen acetylene. We've got a 220 that's a Lincoln, and we've got a 110 that's a Miller. My Miller is my sheet metal machine, and the Lincoln is my frame and industrial welding machine. Running wire on those, you know, I'm running tri-mix gas in them. The wire I'm running, I run 3.0 in my sheet metal and 3.5 in my heavier machine, and you can run 2.3 for sheet metal. You get nicer, smaller welds. I don't have a problem with 3.0 on my 110 machine, and like I said, I use that for all my sheet metal needs. Floor pans, quarter panels, door section repairs. If it's sheet metal, I weld it with my little Miller. When you're fabricating, when you're doing all this, you want a grinder so you can knock those welds down. You want something you can sand with. A high-speed sander on an air tank, cool, that's fine. You know, I'm gonna run down basics, and we'll start showing you some of these tools and some of these procedures. You want the gadgets, you want the safety gear, gloves, goggles, masks. These are imperative. You know, these are more important than the tools themselves. You're not doing anybody any good losing a fucking finger on a weekend hobby project. How's that? Alright, so we got a basic stance on our welding needs. You know, with the gas welding, I can gas weld, I can braze. You can braze aluminum. They have rod out there that brazes aluminum. So you're pretty diverse with a gas welder with oxygen acetylene. You can cut with it. You know, for a hobbyist, a small backpack, the kangaroo pouch of oxygen acetylene with a decent torch setup. That way you can cut, you can braze, you can weld, you can do so many jobs with that little thing. You can come across a setup off of Craigslist for like $250, $300 with good tanks that have something left in them. You go to get those filled, you might spend $50 to fill those little tanks. So that's always something to look at too. You always have your fees, your bottle fees, hazmat materials, all that shit tacked on. No matter how big or small your tank is, those fees are the same. So buy all the tank that you think you can buy and safely store. Little kangaroo pouches, you can throw them in the bed of a truck and strap them and you're fine. You get bigger tanks, you gotta start worrying about that shit rolling around. Acetylene you can't let lay down. An acetylene tank in and of itself is full of acetone because it absorbs acetylene gas like a sponge. That's why you never go over, what is it, 15 pounds atmospheric pressure. If you overcome atmospheric pressure, you'll start pushing acetone out your torch and ruin everything. Alright, so you got your welding pretty much nailed down. When you're fabricating, you got various little hand tools. I'll get into those. You want to set a decent set of hammers and dollies. Ball peen hammers included in there. Little slags of steel, these little chunks of steel that you've collected over the years. Whatever. I also suggest having some copper or aluminum around, either strap or like square tubing, because if you're filling holes, slap that up behind it and you can fill a hole. Not only does it act as a heat sink and draws that heat out of the sheet metal, it lets you weld that hole up without it falling through, creating a larger mess. So you got most of your welding needs there. You know, I always suggest when you're fabricating, go down to Harbor Freight and spend a couple $100, get a shrinker stretcher set and a small brake, a little 30-inch brake. They're cheap. Get them. Get yourself a set of hand seamers like an HVAC guy would use. They're cheap. Piece of railroad track, a big piece of like 3x6 tubing, rectangle tubing, something that you can use to pound shit out on. And that rounds off most of what we have as basic fabricating tools. It's my go-to for almost everything. I can build almost anything off those basic pieces of equipment. You get into air tools, you know, 1/2-inch impact is nice. Most cars you can tear them down with a 1/4-inch drive set and a 1/4-inch air ratchet. They're nice. They're not necessary, but they're nice. When it comes to your compressor, if you're going to be doing any painting, buy as much compressor as you can get. If you're going to paint at all, if you're going to run a DA or a line file at all, I've found most suitably a 60-gallon compressor is going to work best for your needs. Usually if you're painting, you can get one full pass off of a 60-gallon without diminishing the volume enough that it affects your paint poorly. High volume, low pressure, those are your guns. So you get into that, get as much compressor as you can store and purchase. We've got an 80-gallon that's running 22 CFM at 100 pounds, and it's still not enough for what we want to do. We got an 80-gallon reserve tank right next to it, so we got 160 gallons in reserve. It's still not enough. So you get as much compressor as you can buy, and it's still never enough. Getting into painting, you can paint anything with a Harbor Freight gun. Bar none, you can paint anything with a Harbor Freight gun. We're going to have to get into gun setup, gun cleaning and all that. We'll get into that later. If you can purchase a nicer gun, do it. Try to have a dedicated gun. If you're running base coat, clear coat, primer, and enamel, try to have a separate gun for all 4 of those phases. Special purposing guns is imperative. Primer, you want a 1.8 or a 2.2 nozzle, depending on what kind of primer you're shooting or sealer you're shooting. Base coat, clear coat, you know, 1.4, 1.3. Single stage, 1.4, 1.3, but you don't really want to run it through the same gun you're running your base coat through. You don't want it. You want a dedicated gun for clear, just so you don't ever have an issue. Oopsies with not having the gun perfectly clean. You'll have a mask, a respirator mask, and you've got to be able to ventilate the area you're working in. You got to be able to keep it relatively clean and ventilate it well. Fans at that point, and as long as your neighbors don't complain, right? So, you know, that's kind of a rundown. This is long and drawn out rambling, I understand, but that's kind of a rundown of basic shit in the shop you want to have around. Installments to come, I'm going to get out in the shop and I'm going to show you some of the first essential basics. We'll put some dollar values to it, and I'll do my best to show you how to put together your hobby shop. That you can do anything you want, build any hot rod you want on a cheap dime. Most of the stuff you can get at Harbor Freight or, you know, Northern Supplies, another one near us, Tractor Supply stores. That's what we're aiming for, something you're not going to use every day. Settle with enough. The stuff that you have to have good, stuff you don't want to skimp on, I'll show you that. So for now, I'll bid you good day, and I look forward to seeing you folks on the next one. Wow, made it to the end of the video. Thanks for checking in. Come back on the next one. See what the hell we're up to next time. Subscribe, comment. Find us on over on the old Facebook, Smith Welding Restoration LLC on Facebook. Numbers at the beginning. Have any questions? Call.